Greetings and salutations, loyal viewers of this channel. My name is Sean, and today we're going to touch on a WNBA story of all things, one that doesn't involve this ridiculous demand for equal pay between WNBA athletes and NBA athletes, and actually involves Sunny Hostin of The View discovering, and I know this is going to shock many of you based on our previous coverage of Sunny before, racism in the fact that people are interested in this player called Caitlin Clark. Now, we're going to get into this, but before we do, I want to thank everybody who signed up over at actualjusticewarrior.com/join.
Give me the money. Give me the money. Okay.
And remind you that this show is available in podcast form, link to the podcast in the description. So I basically avoided all of the Caitlin Clark related stories throughout this channel's history. I think I might have covered one about another player showing her up on the court after her team ended up beating her team in the college game. And in that particular story, I said, yeah, trash talking is normal, but I mocked the idea that people's anger about the post-game trash talking, the post-game mockery, being the product of evil white racism and not the fact that people don't like that kind of taunting after the game, well after the game, which is what happened in that particular story. But other than that, I've avoided the Caitlin Clark phenomenon, I guess, if that's what you want to call it, including this ridiculous notion that somehow she is entitled to more money because she's only going to make $70,000-ish in terms of salary from the WNBA, while an NBA first-round draft pick would make significantly more. And this is especially ridiculous when you think about the fact that Caitlin Clark is actually making a ton of money in endorsements because people believe that this is finally the player that will break through for the WNBA to at least have some level of interest in the league. Because right now, there's absolutely no interest in the WNBA, and this is largely due to the fact that the WNBA players act like they're entitled to your viewership, and the game is just not all that interesting. But in terms of college ball, the female ratings for Caitlin Clark games were in fact through the roof compared to previous years, so maybe, just maybe, this will translate over into the pro game. Now look, while I would definitely consider doing a WNBA video in the future on the economics of the league, why it looks bleak for them, or talking about how the players don't want to do basic intelligent things like lower the height of the rim so the game can be more entertaining for the audience, today we have to focus on this Sunny Hostin clip because she's got a lot of problems with basketball and women and white women, and she reflects all of those problems and vomits them up in this segment in The View.
You know, I've been a basketball fan since I can remember. I played basketball with my dad in Harlem when I was 5 years old. So I remember loving the game, and the game not necessarily loving women back, right? At all.
So right off the top, Sunny Hostin talks about how she loved the game of basketball, how she was playing with her dad in Harlem, making sure to give herself that street cred, which is desperately needed, especially after it was figured out and we covered on this channel.
Wow. I'm a little bit in shock. I just always thought of myself as Puerto Rican, you know, half Puerto Rican. I didn't think I was, my family was originally from Spain and slaveholders.
Yeah. So that her family descends from slave owners who were so into slavery that they left Spain for Curacao when slavery was made illegal in Spain, and then left Curacao for Puerto Rico when slavery was made illegal in Curacao because they were that into keeping their slaves, that she was actually just your Harlem girl that learned to play the b-ball down in the courts in Harlem, and she just loved the game. But of course, she has to be victimized in this scenario, so the game didn't love her back. It didn't love her back because she was a woman. Now, I don't know Sunny Hostin's height. I'm not going to look it up, even though I easily could, but the fact of the matter is she likely was not that great of a player, and even if she was decent, she actually could have benefited from the love of female basketball, or at least from the fact that we have programs that encourage people into female basketball even prior to the WNBA, aka the NCAA as a league, and gotten a scholarship for her play if she was any good. But she's very upset that men didn't appreciate it, and she's going to go through this timeline of oppression so you can feel really bad for the women.
And the WNBA started in 1996. First games played in 1997. It's 2024, and we're just really now talking about it.
Now, for those of you who are unaware, the WNBA was started in the 90s, as Sunny Hostin said, but it was started by the NBA for PR purposes, and it has never been profitable since. And in fact, Sunny Hostin, with a huge platform, could have talked about the WNBA at any point in time over that nearly nearly 30-year span, but she just did not do so. And the reason she did not do so is because she's not all that interested in the WNBA except to use it as a weapon against the American population to call them evil and sexist. But again, nothing was stopping her from ever covering the WNBA at any point in time before this particular instance. However, what Sunny Hostin is angry about is the thing that is drawing some attention to the WNBA. Some little bit of media coverage is a white girl. That is upsetting her, so she's going to rant about that.
And so if Caitlin Clark is the vehicle that will bring this sport that I have loved so much and so long to little 5-year-old girls playing in Harlem, I say yes, bravo. I have no problem with that.
So she gives a setup that, oh, if this sport is the thing that brings attention to it to little girls in Harlem just like me that love the sport when the sport doesn't love her, that she has no problem with that. Now, of course, you could already tell there's a but coming. You could already tell that Sunny Hostin is going to pivot to something else, and I already spoiled it for you in the title and the thumbnail and in the setup to this particular clip, so let's get into it without further ado, because Sunny Hostin has a problem with Caitlin Clark based on the color of her skin.
With that being said, I do think that there is a thing called pretty privilege. There is a thing called white privilege. There is a thing called tall privilege. And we have to acknowledge that. And so part of it is about race.
Okay, so let's be clear about this. And I guess I'm going to take them in the order that Sunny Hostin brought them up. And that is pretty privilege. If you find Caitlin Clark attractive, then sure, good on you for that. I've only really seen her in gameplay mode where she's not trying to look attractive or anything like that, but there's nothing wrong with the girl. I got nothing against her. And of course, white privilege. She's mad that this girl happens to be white, but then she concludes it with tall privilege. And I just want to point out that we're talking about basketball. And yes, Caitlin Clark is nearly 6 feet tall or at 6 feet tall. So obviously that advantages her in the game of basketball, but that's not a privilege. That's just a happenstance. That's luck. Now there is height privilege specifically for men. Men with higher heights tend to earn more. They tend to, have people rally around them more. They tend to have better luck with women. But the fact of the matter is, we're talking about height in comparison to a game with basketball, which, by the way, even though people tend to think you have to be tall, it's not like it's 1-to-1 that the taller you are, the better you are at the game. But yeah, that gives you an advantage in the game of basketball. It makes you more interesting to watch. One of the reasons why people say they should lower the rim in the WNBA is because they want these girls to play above the rim. And if they play above the rim, then that will be more exciting. And since women on average are not as tall as men, lowering the rim can help compensate for that and make the game more engaging and more entertaining.
Part of it is about race, because if you think about the Brittany Griners of the world, why did she have to go to play in Russia?
They wouldn't pay her.
Because they wouldn't pay her.
Because they wouldn't pay, not because she was black, but because they didn't believe in the WNBA.
This is part of my point.
So then she pivots to the Brittany Griner situation, saying, why did she have to go to Russia? And that was because they wouldn't pay her. They didn't believe her and all that. And Whoopi actually tries to save the segment by saying not because she was black, but because people didn't believe in her. And honestly, I don't know anything about the WNBA at all whatsoever. So I don't know if Griner is considered a good player in the WNBA or a bad player. I absolutely don't care. The last player that I remember having any relevance in the WNBA was actually two players, Candace Parker and Candace Parker. One was an ice, one was an ace. And those players had some kind of attention drawn to them. But the fact of the matter is, if you're not producing value, if you're losing money as a league each and every year, you can't expect the salaries to compensate for that when it doesn't make economic sense. And the WNBA isn't doing well. Now, if Caitlin Clark proves to be viable, if the ratings go up, they will be able to renegotiate better contracts as a league against the owners, and maybe, just maybe, they'll get paid more and they won't have to go to Russia and all that. But again, that has nothing to do with Caitlin Clark, and it has nothing to do with Brittany Griner being black. We've seen potential future stars in the WNBA be promoted that were black, i.e. Candace and Candice Parker.
Now, Caitlin Clark is bringing this money, these sponsorships, we hope, into the league, and other players will benefit from it. But I do think that she is more relatable to more people because she's white, because she's attractive. And unfortunately, there still is that stigma against the LGBTQ plus community. 70% of the WNBA is black. A third of the players are in the LGBTQ plus community.
So look, again, I'm not going to comment too much on the attraction of Caitlin Clark. All I remember her from is with the ponytail while she's running up the court. If you're into her, you're into her, but this is not about that. But the fact of the matter is, in general, yes, a female athlete that is more attractive would likely draw in more attention. And of course, somebody who happens to be a better player, who draws in ratings, who might be more relatable or whatever, is likely to produce more money for the league. But the idea that, oh, she's not a leser as far as we know, therefore this is somehow, a conspiracy against the gays or whatever. The fact of the matter is the WNBA had been hiding and obscuring the fact that a huge portion of their league happens to be lesbian for a long time. In fact, I remember a player who left the WNBA said she was being bullied for being straight in that league, and the WNBA actually marched a girl out to say that that's not the case. That never happens to straights or anything like that. And then years later, that player came out as a lesbian. So she was pretending to be a straight that was fitting in perfectly in the WNBA and dismissing this other player's comments. And then we found out that she was in fact a lesbian. So, I mean, I guess this is something that people assume about the league already, that female athletes might disproportionately be lesbians, I guess. I don't know. But I don't really think this is as well known or as broadly known by the general public as it is on internet niche communities, because people don't know a lot about the WNBA. The fact of the matter is nobody would care if the games were good, if the games were entertaining, but WNBA players are chief among the people fighting against making the game more entertaining.
And we have to do something about that stigma in this country. I think that people have a problem with basketball playing women that are lesbians. Who cares? They are great athletes. Well,
again, I'm not sure where this is coming from. If you were to ask people the reasons why they don't watch the WNBA, them being lesbians would be definitely low on that list.
You can't tell a lesbian unless he tells you she's a lesbian. Because it's not like you look over and go, oh, there's one. No, you don't know.
Now look, I could tell with a good amount of certainty for a lot of women that they are not straight, but the fact of the matter is, we're in this insane scenario where Whoopi Goldberg, who has often said crazy things, although I have given her credit for being the voice of reason in many an instance, has to be the voice of reason against Sunny Hostin's absolute absurdity right here, because essentially she said racist, sexist, white privilege, homophobia, and all those reasons are why you're not watching the WNBA, and Caitlin Clark, while she might do some good, let us not forget she's an evil white racist. Now, of course, I want to leave the question off to you guys out there in the audience. Do you think Sunny Hostin is completely out of bounds in this? And also, do you think Caitlin Clark will actually draw interest in the league as a whole? Or do you think that this is much ado about nothing? A lot of media hype that won't pay off in the ratings. Let me know all your thoughts down in the comments below. As usual, if you liked the video, show them by leaving a like, subscribe for more content, follow me on the social medias, support me via the support links in the description of this video. This has been me talking about the WNBA. Till next time.